What is going on, everybody? It is the Going Over Big Time podcast. I am Mike Charlip, and I am joined once again by my friend and co-host Alan the Cantastic. And Alan, today we are joined by a guest. So, how about you introduce our guest?
Well, I am very excited about this episode. It's been a while since we last chatted. The last time I interviewed this fine gentleman, we were just doing another episode, but it was a little bit different. It wasn't just about wrestling. I'd like to introduce everyone. Sorry, I'm rushing into this. To Mr. Brian White. I believe his ring name is the Honorable One, Brian White. Uh, he is a current independent wrestler, primarily operating, I believe, out of southwestern Ontario. So, sort of the area between London and Windsor. Um, and the other interesting thing about Brian is I understand he is also a local politician in the area. Um, Brian, thank you for coming on the episode. Perhaps you'd like to just give us a bit of an intro about yourself and perhaps talk a little bit about your hometown.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Alan. Good to see you again, and good to meet you, Mike.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I'm here in Sarnia, in actually my freshly painted office. I haven't had an office since COVID in my house. So when COVID happened, everything kind of blew up in the house, and it's just literally taken years to figure it out. So I don't have stuff on the walls yet. I don't have anything other than this chair, a desk over there, and this really bright light over my head. So I haven't even put the dimmer on it yet. So it's nice to be in here. It's nice to chat. And Sarnia is, for those of you who don't know, Southern Ontario. Like Alan said, Southwestern Ontario is my home base. I am a city councilor here in Sarnia, and Sarnia is right on the border of Port Huron, Michigan. So if I were to cross the border, it's only an hour to Detroit. Kind of a city that I'd say I kind of grew up in. I spent more time in Detroit than I did in Toronto. And I mean that's not even close, by a long shot. So consider myself one of those. I guess bilingual people. I can speak Celsius and Fahrenheit without having to try too hard. So kilometers and miles are also no big obstacle for me. And I live on Lake Huron. If the waves were crashing right now, I'd be able to hear it through the window. Very blessed. My house isn't on the lake, but it's pretty darn close. So we have a beautiful spot here, and we also have a river. So we've just got water surrounding us here. We're only an hour to London, Ontario, where AEW was last night. So I did some crowd work there last night. It was a lot of fun for AEW. As a politician, it's a privilege. It sounds cliche to say, but probably when we get into my story a little bit, you'll understand. For me to be able to serve my community is not only something I never could have imagined doing, but if I'm being very cynical about it, I probably have no right to do it as well. Except everybody has a right to be in politics. So kind of leave it at that for now, and by all means, ask away anything.
Okay, yeah. Well, again, thank you for coming on. And a lot of times when we have people on, we like to get like their history and like how they got into wrestling. So, what was your how did you get into the world of wrestling? What was your beginning? Like, how did you become a fan? And also, like, how did you go into also becoming a wrestler?
Very, very long gap between becoming a fan and
Of
becoming
course,
a wrestler.
of course.
I'm sold. I tell people I remember the run up to WrestleMania. So then the next question is WrestleMania what? That's the end of the
Yeah,
sentence.
yeah.
WrestleMania. That's all it was called at the time. Seeing
Hmm.
Mr. T jump the gate and rush the ring and try and save Hulk Hogan. It was a very special time for me, with a lot of the personal stuff that I dealt with. My brother who's 2 years older than me, we buried ourselves in a few passions. delivering newspapers was a cool job that I had starting at age 6, so that was a good escape. And listening to music, and I was an avid music fan from very, very early on, and so I would bury myself in that, with the dream mutually of becoming a musician and a pro wrestler. And I would dream about these things while I was delivering newspapers. I mean, I was walking down the street singing songs and having matches in my head for the KWF, the Kids Wrestling Federation, and my title belt was white. And I mean, I had this stuff so mapped out in my brain at the time that it was almost real. It was almost real. These matches in my head were real, and getting the LJN dolls, and having the matches in the ring with the wrestling album on a tape recorder off to the side, and doing my best Howard Finkel impression while I'm playing the intro music, while I'm establishing the heels and the baby faces, and doing both Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura's commentary, exchanging between the two of them in different voices. It was I mean I created my own little world, and it was all right up in here, and to me it was as vivid as watching it on TV. And we were lucky because we got on the antenna, Detroit television. We got signals from Hamilton. So we had, and Toronto. So we had, even though I'm about three hours away, from Toronto, about 240 kilometers or 160 miles, ish. We had wrestling on Saturday morning, like 3 hours of wrestling between all the different stations. We had wrestling on Saturday night with Maple Leaf Wrestling, which was WWF at the time. And we had international wrestling out of Montreal. We had Bruisers Bedlam out of Detroit. We had the Sunday morning WWF show too, which I believe was Wrestling Cavalcade. So Saturday morning was Superstars Cavalcade, featuring Gorilla Monsoon on Sunday morning. We had Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. Mm-hmm. And we even had UWF when it was that 1 year that UWF existed. So, I mean, we buried ourselves in wrestling. The Rougeau brothers, before they went on to the WWF, because I was watching international wrestling, and Dino Bravo, all those guys I knew from international wrestling. When they showed up in WWF, like, I remember those moments, and I popped hard because I already knew who these guys were. They were favorites of mine.
Yeah, and that was a big thing during that time. Of course, when Vince McMahon was like buying out the territories. So a lot of times when people were fans of those territories, and then they would show up in the bigger market like WWE, it was cool for people back then to see their favorites from their local federation show up on national TV. So yeah, I was I learned a lot about like that era of stuff, mainly because I wasn't, unfortunately I wasn't born around the time of the first WrestleMania. I was six years away from being born. So but yeah, that is it's great to like hear people's stories of how they get into wrestling like that. And yeah, Alan, what do you have to add?
Yeah, it's I really wish, like, I mean I was born in like the early 80s, so probably I started watching in 1996, but just listening to Brian talk about the stories of all the territories back in the day is just so fascinating. There was so many options back then.
Yep.
Sometimes it just makes you wish that you had the chance to experience that for yourself in person. So so it sounds like you were like a really big fan when you were growing up. I guess, like, in between, was there a point where you kind of decided you wanted to do this yourself, or did you have like some other goals in life that I know that you had your eyes set on, but then you saw, like, you looked at wrestling and you thought, oh yeah, I like watching it, maybe I could do it as well.
Yeah, the thing with that was it was not accessible here. So
Mhm.
there was no indie scene, so I couldn't go see a territory show close up. I certainly didn't have the resources or the family that would support something like that. So to travel to see that as well. So one time WWF came to Sarnia, for a house show, and that was a pretty amazing experience in the early '90s. And again, to see that sort of a little bit of it demystified, if you will, because I could see down the hall George the Animal Steel, but wearing a suit and tie, right? And Tito Santana outside wearing street clothes. I had to jump out of the way because this big giant car just about ran me over because we were really early to the arena, and I'm screaming at this car, and then the Undertaker got out of it. He was driving, and just wearing jeans, and Paul Bearer got out of the passenger seat wearing, carrying a couple of big bags of McDonald's, right? So it kind of demystified it to me in a way that made it seem accessible and human almost. But beyond that, there was really no thought that I could ever do that. And we can talk about this other stuff later if you want, but it was a tough childhood, especially early on, and then for various reasons it continued to be tough, and so there were um other dreams that emerged, I guess, over time, and influences in my life, and music was a lot more accessible to me. um so by early high school, I was playing bass and trying to become a rock star, and that was a legit goal. I was doing music in high school as well, so playing tuba by day, playing bass, by night and on weekends, and trying to take as many instruments as I could in school to learn the theory and all that stuff, and that was really going to be my creative outlet. But things changed really fast, and as high school wound up, um, I'd found another passion, which was creating video. And I watched a lot of Much Music at the time, and just sort of this long story short, I started to find confidence to be able to speak. Like I was not a public speaker. I was the kid that, for a 5-minute speech in grade five would do like 45 seconds and then go and sit back down. Like I was done, and, but 19, when I was 19, I was asked to do a eulogy for somebody who was very, very important to me. And it scared the can we swear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It
Yeah,
scared
you
the
could say
piss
it.
out of me. All right. And so I stood up, and this person was like a father figure to me. And so when I had to deliver a eulogy at 19, it was like the greatest gift he could ever give me, because I um I didn't have anything prepared. I just stood up and delivered from, the heart, off the cuff, and it turned me on to a whole other part of myself that I didn't realize I had, which was just the ability to stand in front of people and be real and human, and make people feel stuff. So it sort of led this series of, well, I'm going to be a Much Music VJ when I grow up. So I was, working in a restaurant. I'd never stopped working since I was 6 years old. So I started working in restaurants when I was 14, 15. Um, I went to a different restaurant and stayed there for like 7 years, and it gave me the ability to make money, get kicked out of my house when I was 19 and not starve, and learn how to be an adult and continue to think about stabilizing myself through an actual career. And so I went off to film school. I picked a college that I wanted to. I'd been doing a bunch of TV stuff here in Sarnia, and went off to college and went to film school so I could be a Much Music VJ. And by the end of college, I was a filmmaker. I wasn't in front of the camera. I was behind the camera. The evolution over 3 years was tremendous, and my passion for carrying the camera and telling real life stories and documentary took over. So all that happened, right? I went 90, so you say 96 was a great time to get into wrestling, because in 97, when the Monday Night Wars were kicking off, really, I was in college and I hadn't watched wrestling for a while. And so I started watching wrestling again. And so enjoy the time at the beach there, boys. I don't know if you heard that, but the first year of college, I did this television project. So it was broadcast, it was film. We shot on film, we did radio, we did television all in the first year. And so when my first television project, I pitched to the class to do this real life version of a pro wrestling show. And everyone went, "What are you even talking about?" I said, "Well, imagine if we were behind the scenes and actually talking about how they put matches together. And then we went and actually did the matches. But imagine a camera going backstage." This is before they did that in WWE. Like,
Before Beyond the Mat.
It's like it, but it literally happened within months of us recording this thing. And I was like, how did this even happen? But it was almost like this ability of me to see that the world was turning and things were shifting, right? Because I'm a storyteller, I was creative, and that was my medium. So I was like, it'd be really cool if there was a show that went behind the scenes and talked to and showed people, you know, maybe putting matches together, or at least talking out of character, or then pretending to do promos on each other. And then so we rented a boxing ring. We like a boxing club let us use their stuff. We all created all these cool characters. I didn't know all these other people in college would go for being doing a wrestling show in 1997. But sure enough, we all put together, you know, these cool characters and matches. I was in the tag team. I was Le Chef because I'd been working in restaurants and I still had all my chef's gear. So I'm like, I'll be Le Chef. And one of my friends, who, you know, he was, I think, gay, right? So easiest way to say it, he's gay. So he wanted to kind of play into that part of himself. And so he called himself Manslave. And we were the tag team, Le Chef and Manslave. And we had this epic battle against this team called White Trash Incorporated. And their finishing move was called the welfare check. Like, dude, we put so much thought and energy into this, and I had stopped watching wrestling, which was the cool part because it almost made me fall in love with it again. But it was just a way to pitch something to a class that none of them were going to pitch, right? So when we had to do the scripts, we all had the assignment to do scripts. 110 students in that first semester. So we all had to do the scripts, but only, I think, 5 of them were getting made. So how can I do something completely out of the box, and something that would be entertaining enough for me to want to actually put some effort into it? And we made this cool little show called TWF, and Tough Wrestling Federation. And you know what? I was in love with wrestling again, just like that. And then the Monday Night Wars happened. And then the Bret Hart thing happened, and the documentary came out, and I fell in love with that documentary so much so that I, you know, was writing the filmmaker and asking for advice, and it really helped steer me in towards doing documentary, because then I went, okay, real life stuff is so much more compelling. So it's wild to me to look back, to see how all this stuff continues to intersect, you know, throughout my life. So in those early days at college, I had no intention of going into wrestling, but wrestling was very much a part of my success in college in getting through and, you know, getting honors and becoming a filmmaker. So and that's a long time ago. That was so but I studied it right from there on. I never stopped studying it. I never stopped being a fan from that point on again. And I never stopped studying the business of the characters, the real people behind the scenes, the demise of WCW, which, again, early days of the internet, was hard to get information. That's the stuff I was digging into. even though it
That's
was dial up and slow, right?
that's really cool that like you used filmmaking to get your passion back essentially. And yeah, I mean, as you were saying, like people back, especially back then, like you didn't see documentaries about the process of how wrestling is done. Even today, when we had like present day, where we had Unreal, and people were still like trying to protect the business and trying to like keep people from learning about the process of how it's done. And I mean, we talked about Unreal when it happened, and I thought that it was I want to learn about like how these things are made and how you go about doing those things. And like even like when Beyond the Mat happened, like that was something that Vince McMahon didn't do. Like
Mhm.
he didn't tell us like these things and how he, especially like the Draws stuff and the Mankind stuff and the Terry Funk stuff that was going on during that time, like. And for you, like you mentioned how like when you were younger and you saw like Undertaker in street clothes, like that was another thing that like that didn't happen. Like you didn't the Undertaker didn't do that. Like he was very private about those things. And like we hear stories all the time of how faces and heels were not supposed to be seen together, and that was just that was just them living their lives, but they had to play it up to the point where like they're not friends in real life. And I enjoyed hearing those stories and stuff like that. I didn't think it hurt the business, and I enjoy hearing that stuff, like behind the scenes stuff about wrestling. Mainly because I'm just such a fan that I want to know everything. But
No, and I think that's
yeah,
I think it's I think
I
it's
think that that's really cool.
no, and I think you're to your point. It's proven to be non-detrimental to it. But back then, when there weren't necessarily wrestling schools, all these guys really did have to try and protect it to go all the way back to the early days, the Kearney days, and that tradition of protecting every element, every ounce of that. Um, I understand why they did it, but obviously at some point it was going to start to crack, and it had to.
Mhm.
I heard stories from friends who were like, "Oh, I that Razor Ramon guy. I was when I lived in this town. I went into a bar and his name was Big Scott Hall back then, and we got drunk together." And I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, that's
Mhm.
cool." Right? So they could only do so much to protect it even at that point, but certainly once information started to just fly like rapid fire, they could no longer control who the ringside photographers were and who, was working and editing, the wrestling magazines, all that stuff that we got. I mean, it's kind of like in some ways it was like propaganda. It was very
Yeah.
controlled as to who was in that club too, because they had to they had to protect the business. So everything came across as being very, very real, to the point where I remember WrestleMania 3 being in Detroit, and I cried that day because I thought my stepdad might actually surprise me one morning and do something really, really special and say, "Get in the car. We're heading to Detroit, heading to Pontiac, Michigan." No, I knew about 1 in the afternoon when I was still sitting in my basement. That's when I started to cry. I'm like, "It's not happening." And but it was so real that the news was there covering it, and they were taking a shot from the concourse, and so they did this live action shot from the concourse, and over their shoulder I could see the screen, like the big screen for the stadium, and the ring down below. um and they just happened to go live right when Ricky Steamboat pinned the Macho Man, and I just ran around my house screaming my fool head off, like, because they were reporting on this thing like it was real,
Yeah.
and I was just losing my stinking mind. But other than that, like that stuff didn't usually leak out. That was all super controlled. Even something like that would have been frowned upon.
Yeah, and obviously, like a lot of the older uh, guys that have been in the business for so long, like who don't like when Dave Meltzer was like first coming up and that was like new, like they didn't like that. Like they didn't like that he was telling people stuff that was happening behind the scenes. They wanted to keep it a secret still, and to the point where there are still old timers from that era that don't respect what he does. And I don't think that should still be an issue, especially now with the way social media is. Like it's on a whole nother level as far as and like the kayfabe of everything. It's so different than it was back then. And again, we've talked about on here, like I know that so and so aren't really rivals. I know that they're friends in real life. I know that The Rock and Steve Austin actually really liked each other. Like stuff like that. So I get like suspending disbelief is hard for people, and especially in that era, like that when quote unquote wrestling was still real to everybody, to the point where like you can get emotional about Steamboat and Savage because that was special. And I just think we are past the point of that stuff, like being kayfabe being the way it was back then, for sure.
Yeah, but it's cool that I've lived through that evolution, right? Especially when we got to that era in the late '90s when it was very clear, because part of the reason that realism had to evolve, because part of the reason why I lost interest was when WWF was the only game in town. I just couldn't buy into some of the characters that were coming out. They're like Isaac Yankem and Duke the Dumpster Drosy and
the Goon. I remember the Goon.
the Goon and
a hockey guy.
Yeah,
and then they
95
dress up they dress up Steve Lombardi in a baseball outfit, and I'm supposed to now know it, like pretend it's not Steve Lombardi. I know it's Steve Lombardi. I've been watching him since I was a kid, right? So all of a sudden he's got. I'm going, okay.
That era specifically, like I didn't start watching full time until 99 2000, but I had seen earlier stuff. But and obviously I've gone back and watched all the old stuff that I can and stuff like that. But 95 is easily like that's the era that people talk about the most, where people fell off of wrestling because of that gimmicky, occupation gimmicks, and that was not a good time to be a wrestling fan.
Well, even Terry Taylor, who again, because we had wrestling magazines and got to see him in sometimes in the odd other show that would pop up. Like, I know who Terry Taylor is, and then all of a sudden you're making him spike his hair on the top with red hair dye and crow like a rooster. Like, come on, like it was insulting to wrestling fans, and it was insulting to the wrestlers, and I was embarrassed, secondhand embarrassed for people that I respected, as a fan. Didn't know Terry, but I respected him as a fan, as one of the greats, and started to realize that whoever was in charge at the WWF at the time, because I don't think I realized it was Vince, was petty. and it was obvious to me back then that some of these wrestlers were just being, quite frankly, abused by the work that they had to do, because they were not able to live up to their potential, or even to their actual reputation. right?
Well, and
Dusty
even
Rhodes is another one, right?
well, that's what I was going to mention. Like even before that era, Dusty Rhodes was so respected and so well known for being such a all around talent. And then he goes to WWE, WWF at the time, and Vince just turns him into a joke because whatever for whatever reason, it's pettiness because he came from the other place, or he just wants to create these characters and doesn't want to go off of their lineage and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, obviously, we've seen that hasn't changed in certain aspects when he was still around, of course. But yeah, so going off of all of that, like your background of being a fan and everything, like how did you get into becoming a wrestler?
Many years later, again, not ever having to lose the passion, and having it teased at me in different parts of my even filmmaking career, or this guy who was running TV for an indie company out in Nova Scotia when I lived there. I was almost in it then, and then I wasn't. Um, so finally, after what seems like a lifetime, and it was a lifetime, for many people. It was, when I was already in office here, and a local wrestling show came, or not a local wrestling show, Smash came, and they did a show locally, and so I just took my son, and we went and we watched, and it was a pretty small crowd, but it was amazing. The talent, the skill, the excitement of being at an indie show in a small venue, and MVP was there, um, and Butcher and Blade were there before they were Butcher and Blade. So
Mhm.
there's some pretty cool people that were on that card that really impressed me, and so MVP had this spot where, uh, he took, Sebastian Suave, who owns Smash, dragged him through the crowd, and so my kid got to chop him, in the chest, and I got a really cool photo of that, and I'm like, this is great. Like MVP is holding the villain back. I didn't know Seb at the time, and my son, who was, really small, was giving him a chop. So I wrote the local promoter, probably the next day, and said, like, my God, that was unreal. That was so much fun. I haven't had that much fun in a long time, and so let me know what I can do to help, because I kind of know how shows happen in places like our town, right? They get a good crowd once, and that wasn't even a great crowd. It was good, like it was fine, but I mean, 100 people maybe, right? So,
Mhm.
um, so I go, okay, like if that doesn't pick up, or if worse, it declines, we're never going to have that option here again, right? They're not going to come back. So what I wrote the promoter and said, hey, look, what can I do to help? And he had seen me post a picture of my son chopping Sebastian, so he said, hey, that picture that you just posted, um, post it over here on this page, and say something, to embarrass, the Sebastian. So I did, and like 2 3 days later, I get this tag, and Sebastian had cut a promo on me, and I was like, okay, cool, like really cool. Like, okay, this wrestler just cut a promo on me. That's pretty rad. Okay, what's that about? And so then I get a message like, hey, cut a promo back on this guy. And then Seb himself actually wrote me in the background and introduced himself and said, hey, we're coming back for a show. Like, it would be kind of fun to do something. Um, we'll announce that you're going to be there to help. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it started. It's MVP's fault, really. He got me into this nonsense, and he's a really nice guy. But I do blame him for this, pain that I'm in. But he, it just and it, you know what, it evolved from there. It starts off with the local politician meeting this guy in the ring and saying, let's start over. You said some nasty things about me, I said some nasty things back about you, and here, let's just make it a fresh start. We'll shake hands in the middle of the ring. Welcome to Sarnia. I'm proud to have you in my town and proud to host Smash Wrestling here. And so we shook hands, and then he beat the shit out of me. And as of course is supposed to happen like that.
Yeah.
And then you know, he cheated to win that night against Brent Banks, and I grabbed the mic and I say, no, you don't, not in my town. Next show, right? And then next show, I'm handcuffed to Kingdom James, his manager. And so next show, they end up handcuffing me to the ring and beating the shit out of me again while I watch them torture my good friend, my longtime friend over there that I just met, Brent Banks. And they're like, big tough guy, why don't you get in the ring? Right. And then the next show was a tag team match with Brent against Kingdom and Seb. And so that's when Tyson Dukes sent me a message and said, hey man, you better start coming up to my school and we'll get you ready for that show. And that's what it was. It was get me ready for that show. But because of my history, first off, they never would have gone that far. It never would have gone that far. But every one of those moments goes all the way back to me delivering papers. It's like, you know, that old saying, like, act like you've been there 1,000 times before, right? Like if and when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there 1,000 times before. It was like that. They're like, oh my God, like your facials were amazing, or the way that you like reacted when we handcuffed you to the ropes, like, you sure you've never done this before? And I'm like, oh, I've done this 1,000 times before, all up here. Right. But I've also been a filmmaker and made TV and acted and hosted, and all that stuff was just, it was like I was made to do it. Right. So that's why
you were prepared.
Like, hey, why don't you at the next show? Hey, why don't you? And I'm marking out the entire time, of course. And so once I get in the ring to train the first time, none of that shit mattered anymore. Because Tyson didn't treat me like I was a special character or a gimmick, and I didn't want it to look that way, because I remember seeing Pete Rose take a bump, and I remember seeing you know some of the other celebrities take bumps, and it was really weird and awkward, and I'm like, that's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. So I mean, while the other students had to work on their fundamentals for 3 months before they got to do the stuff that I was doing on my first day, I was pushed into it like day one, you know, getting body slammed, running ropes, and getting ready for this show. And man, it was incredible. It was incredible. And that's really how it happened, because I broke my wrist in that match with Brent against Kingdom and Sab. I thought I had my WrestleMania moment. Never expected to do another one. And then Destiny started to come to town, and they reached out and said, "Hey, you want to do a battle royal?" So this is like 9 months later, and my wrist had healed, and again, I'd had my moment. Was never going to do that again. And then I went, oh, do I want to do a battle royal? I was like, well, hell yeah, I want to do a battle royal. Of course I want to do a battle royal. And they're like, oh, good, because then they sent me the graphic for the poster, and I was on the front already. I was like, okay, cool. So then cool, I was back to training like full time, instantly. That was it.
That's pretty cool. You brought up Smash Wrestling. I actually they're pretty strong staple around the GTA area, and you know, I remember watching them, and you know, you mentioned Brent Banks and Tyson Dukes. That's where I also saw them as well the first time. I also saw them along with guys like Tarek and a fellow named Drew Gulak at that time. Also, a very, very young gentleman by the name of Josh Alexander was first time I saw him at Smash. And we all know where he is currently right now. I guess like I guess from the way you're describing things, it sounds like you may have you started wrestling maybe a bit later in life. I guess I don't want to age you or anything like that. Well, I'm getting let me get into like I sense like it's almost like the David Arquette story, like that David Arquette, like he did that movie about wrestling where he was just the actor, and then he was like, oh, I think I want to try this out like for real, like, and then he
Yeah.
was like 40 something at that point. So, you
Yeah.
know, these days I'm always told like your average wrestler, oh, Tony Storm started at age 13, or Paige started at 9. And you're like, how much younger are these people getting? Are they gonna go down to like diapers when
Yeah.
diapers they start wrestling? But I think like
Yeah.
there's people that start off in almost all like different stages in life, right? Since it sounds like you did your politician thing first, and then they came to town, and then it just kind of rekindled your passion for it a bit, and then you were like, oh yeah, let's get into this, let's see if I can do this.
You caught the bug.
It sounds cliche and you'll hear it over and over again, but once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, and it really is. It's hard to imagine walking away. And then a weird thing happens, you get hurt or there's a lapse between shows or whatever, and you almost feel like, okay, cool, like I think I could walk away now. And then you get afraid to take that first bump again after you go back to a ring, and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm done. And then you take the bump and you're like, yep, that sucked. Okay, no, wait, I'm back. This is good. This is the right thing to do. And so it's amazing because so yeah, I was at 42. I just turned 50. So it evolved, right? Because okay, I want to do this battle royal. That's fun. I do the battle royal, and then I get asked, hey, do you want to work a program with this guy? And the whole shtick is going to be, you're a politician and you have no business being in my ring, so I'm going to beat the piss out of you because I end up eliminating him to win the battle royal, of course. And then it sets up this like repeat match after match all the way to a lumberjack match. I climb the top rope and jump, and we'll do like the bowling pin thing with the guys, and not super happy about that, but that's okay. But it was part of an evolution in me because I continued to train this whole time, and I'd go back and I talked to Tyson. He's like, "Yeah, how was the show?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, they made me do this," and he's like, "Right." So we are aligned more because Tyson and I are close in age. We grew up watching the same stuff. He lived what I was watching. So the learning gap was really about me getting my body to unlearn and relearn how to do things that it had never done before. I started going to the gym regularly, started putting on actual weight in a good way, and started teaching DDP yoga, and well, first off doing it and then teaching it, and all these things to help keep my body safe, build strength, build fluidity in my movements. And it went from, okay, I'm going to do this program with this guy in my own hometown to, well, now I want to do a show here where I wrestle a match, but it's not part of the gimmick. It's just me coming out. I bought gear, right? And I just want to wrestle in front of my hometown fans and show them that I've spent time learning how to do this and just have an actual match with a guy. So one of the guys that I'd been training with agreed. He's like, "Yeah, I'll come over to your town and we'll put you over and we'll have a really fun match." And so we put on a really fun match, and I was like, "Okay, cool." So now I've had my next WrestleMania moment, and now I'm done with that again. But then I wasn't done because now the goalpost moved. It's like, okay, well, can I wrestle in a different town? Can I can I wrestle in a town where nobody knows me for the gimmick, for the politician, like as a public figure? Like, can I go and wrestle in front of people and get them to react to me when I'm just a wrestler, right? And that's when I started to like the name stuck, the honorable one, but I started to not wear the blazer in the ring, and I started to, because I don't wear that shit anyway most days. That's a monkey suit. This is the most dressed up I get, and that's because I just came back from like a police town hall meeting right before I got home here with you guys. But it just can continue to evolve. Like, okay, can I go wrestle in London and have people still cheer for me or boo me, regardless? Come up to me after, shake my hand, and say, "Hey, that was a fun match. What's your name again?"
Mhm.
And then, okay, well, will they book me in Hamilton? Will they book me in Toronto? Can I possibly wrestle? And then the other part of the David Arquette part of that is, and I know part of his motivation was like, I went almost instantly into main events locally. Nobody can tell me that there wasn't resentment, right? I know there
Mhm.
was.
Mhm.
I know there was. There was not a whole lot of heat given to me at the time. But and people were most people were kind, and that's fine. But I grew up with low self-esteem, and as the fat kid and the kid with the broken home and all that kind of shit, like I see the people that aren't talking to me and I go, yeah, I suck. Or, yeah, they don't want me here. I don't belong. Right. So then it became like internally this constant prove myself, right? Prove I belong, prove myself, earn their trust, earn their respect, and maybe eventually I'll fit. Maybe I'll fit in. And so that was all part of the internal workings too, part of the motivation, right? Can I get booked in another town? Do I think somebody would be willing to have me main event? Now would somebody be willing to put me in the ring? Like, hey, do you want to work this guy? And I go, oh my God, no, I have no right to work this person. I got no business being in the ring. They're I way look up to them. And they're like, no, I think you totally could work with them. I go, oh, okay, wow, okay, thank you, and wow, and do I think somebody would be willing to put a title on me? Like, so you
Yeah.
go through all this natural the stuff that every wrestler goes through. I've now gone through in that,
Yeah.
evolution of who I am in the ring, and that character evolution. Drop the drop the blazer, but don't drop the moniker. So now what does that moniker mean? Because that's what people know me as. Like, they're not ever going to not know me as Brian White. So what does the honorable one mean now?
Mhm.
And start to evolve that as a character.
Yep.
So
So with that said, who are some of the like more notable people that you've wrestled?
John Greed the other day was actually a lot of fun for me because I used to watch him when I was, in the younger Brian era, right?
Mhm.
I've tagged with Bhupender Gujar, and that was fun.
Okay.
Um, I've tried to say no to most of the bigger matches, and I have noped a couple of big ones because I just honestly feel like most people who are striving for this should have the opportunity to do it. So, like, even when Seb reached out and said, let's do the match, I was like, is there someone else in this room that wants to work you that could benefit from that experience? But Tyson is probably the top for
Mhm.
me. It's not that I haven't been around and in the locker room, and I'm probably going to end up teaming up with Rhino soon on a show.
That's cool.
I've been in Diener's corner a bunch of times, but I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of who I've worked and who I get to work against or with as a partner, it's all been super meaningful in so many different ways, because once you start working shows and you learn to respect people, for who they are and their skills. Like, I'm in awe, right, of most of them for all kinds of different reasons. So for me to work El
Yeah.
Reverso in his first ever
Mhm.
cage match, he's like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I've never done a cage match, and I can't think of anyone better to do it with than you. And I go, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
so are we gonna bleed? And he goes, oh yeah, hell yeah, we're gonna bleed, brother. And I go, oh my God, like, I've never bled before. He's like, me neither. I was like, holy shit. Okay, cool. Like, so that's what it becomes about for me, is like having these moments with people that I have looked up to since I was on the other side, sitting in the chairs, and going like, okay, well, like, why am I in the ring with you? Like, so
Mhm.
whether they've worked for WWE or I've shared the locker room, with Butcher Blade, Josh Alexander, Daniel Garcia, MVP, and on and on. I've wrestled Amir Jordan like 3 times, and I used to see him on NXT UK. That's kind of cool,
Yep.
to be able to say that, and it's just this constant pinch myself, appreciate what I'm doing, and really do my best to enjoy being in the ring with these guys. I had a hell of a match with a guy a couple nights ago who's out of Windsor, and he wrestles in a tag team called the A Team, and I friggin' loved our match. Absolutely loved our match. We had so much fun, and he was like nervous to work with me, and I was like,
Mm.
well, first off, that's silly because it's me, and if we screw things up, like, I sure don't care. So, because we'll just figure it out, and we'll make it work, and
Mhm.
we'll have tons of fun doing it, right? So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. But a moment though, like moment for me,
Yeah.
besides being on a show with Jimmy Hart and bringing him water in the locker room and stuff, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like really cool, like really really cool, and standing with Jimmy, talking to Jimmy, and having someone come up and interrupt us and ask for a picture with me. I was like, okay, wait.
Yeah.
That's excuse me, Jimmy, I've got a fan, right?
Oh, not
Jimmy,
not not one of the most notable managers of any era.
right?
Me.
It was really really wild to me, but
Yeah.
also I got to wrestle in front of Tito Santana,
Oh.
Oh, that's
right?
sick.
like
That's
like
awesome.
because if I'm a heel, I rewatched the Greg the Hammer Valentine Tito Santana matches, like for the
Mhm.
days leading up to, because I haven't been heel in years. So when I was, which I'm so anxious to get back to doing some of that. But whenever I'm a heel, Greg is my go-to. And I
Yeah.
always go back because those early days, it's that green Intercontinental leather belt,
Mhm.
you know, Greg and Tito with the feud that probably more than any other feud turned me on to wrestling and hooked me, like legit hooked me. Their
Mhm.
cage match, like just the emotion that they had when they fought each other in those early days. And I always wish they'd have gone back to that feud. And once they kind of cleared that hurdle and Tito got that new belt, they never went back to it. Greg went into tag teaming with Beefcake, which was fine, but
Yeah.
Greg is the heel. Greg is the heel I lean on. So to wrestle in front of Tito was pretty special. And then we locally started a company called Chem Valley Wrestling probably like 6 years ago. 6 years ago. I just bought it off the guy like a year ago.
Mm.
So now I own a wrestling company. That's cool.
Nice.
But as part of that, we wanted to create a mid card title because we were putting our main title on TNA guys primarily, like at that level, and we knew that first off, we wanted that to stay elevated at that, but we knew we had so much talent that we were able to pull from the workhorse champions, right? Like the people that
Yeah.
are showing up with 2, 3, 4 years experience that could put on a main event, that could wrestle, but they didn't have the moniker or the name value yet. But we want
Mhm.
to recognize them with a title, right? So the owner of the company came to me and said, will you design the title for me? So I went back in history to the titles that turned me on the most. And for whatever reason, because I didn't even watch WCW back then, but there was something so powerful about watching Ron Simmons as the first Black World Champion, right? Holding that title and that plate just stuck with me. And it was similar to the Winged Eagle that Brett had and that actually Macho Man first debuted.
Yep.
But it was different enough. And for whatever reason, that was my favorite belt in the history of wrestling, right? For all the history, I kept going through all these other titles, and I kept looking at that one and going like, "That's the one." And I don't know if it was probably because of the meaning of it, as much as anything. It's Ron Simmons, the first Black World Champion ever in pro wrestling, and I just love to look at the belt. And it didn't last very long. Like they moved back to the giant gold thing very soon after that, right? So I asked for it to be designed with that as the center plate. We redesigned the outer plates, and I had the Great Lakes etched in the one plate. We called it the Great Lakes Championship, and I had the names of the Great Lakes etched in the one side plate, and I turned them around, black outline, beautiful looking plates. And then in the other plate, the symmetrically, I had the Great Lakes written in the Ojibwe language, the original people from here, from around the Great Lakes. So as a just a quiet nod to our history, to the Anishinaabeg people of this region. So, long story. First off, the owner made me the first Great Lakes champion, which I was really pumped about.
You'll probably be honored to find out that is the only thing about you on cagematch.com.
Oh, really?
The only thing.
Of all the hundreds of matches I've had, that's the only thing.
I don't know why Mike, I don't know why you just look on cagematch.com. Like if you look up Brian White, 519, I think that's your Instagram handle. You can find. I just looked up Chem Valley Wrestling, Hammerlock Wrestling, which is yet another promotion you're in. I think you're in another one as well. They just started out Woodbridge. They may have had a show back in the summer.
Up in Vaughan, yeah.
Vaughan, yeah.
And yeah, and I do a lot of these other, like I'll pop in and out of Brantford. I wrestled for CWF a lot too, up in Niagara. And that's a nice historic wrestling promotion. With a lot of history in Canada, doing the Ice Road tours and stuff. So I love working up there for Chris Thorne, and whether it's for the CWF brand or the NWX brand, it's both. It's also meaningful to me, right? But that Great Lakes belt though, and that was really special. I won it in a cage match against Reverso, and we now, that was a whole other story, which was just so meaningful and powerful for all of us on a personal level. But we finally, last summer, I was working a show for CCW in Six Nations, and Ron Simmons was on the show. And so I packed the belt in my bag, and I'd finished wrestling. I'm wrestling in front of Ron Simmons, by the way.
That's
and
awesome.
Rhino's there, Ron Simmons there. It just rained on the ring. We were outside. There's a vinyl canvas, so I could barely stand because our feet were just spreading like this. And I'm like, I'm about to die in front of one of my heroes. Also, Rhino's wrestling right after me, and I'm really worried about him because he just had hip replacement. So part of me was like, I don't want to die in front of Ron Simmons. I don't want to look like an idiot in front of Ron Simmons, but also I'm worried about Rhino. So anyway, we get through this match. We all wrestle. We finish the show. I'm sitting with Ron Simmons. This is insane. And I'm like, I hate to be that guy, but can I show you something? He's like, of course. So I run off to my bag. I bring the belt and I show him the belt, and his eyes just got really big. And I told him the story about the Anishinaabeg words on the plate. I told him how much I love that title and what it meant to me. And then he just went off. He just went off for like 5 minutes about how historic that championship is, and how important that moment was, not only for him, but for all of pro wrestling and all this other kind of stuff. And we just had this moment together where he just goes, you are just doing such an honor for me and what you've done with that title. And it means so much to me to see that. So he's like, can we take a picture together with your belt? And I was like, come on.
What am I gonna say? No.
Come on.
Childhood hero, like
to be
Twist my arm.
I did not look at him and say damn though, thankfully, because
Yeah, don't do that.
right. Okay, now
That's my line.
Right now, go away. Never mind. Leave, Mark. The promoter's like, Brian, what are you doing? You bringing a belt from another promotion, you fucking Mark? And I was like, you're a Mark too, or you wouldn't have booked him. And he goes, yeah, it's true. I was like, see.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story, especially because of how much that moment meant to you, and getting to share that with him, and that's great. I love that.
Never could have imagined that was going to happen, so I couldn't pass up the moment. Right? I never imagined I'd even meet him.
Yeah. So yeah, that's crazy. So, all right. Well, yeah, it sounds like you're really like loving what you're doing now, and your story is so interesting of how you got into wrestling and how you got to becoming a wrestler and all of that. So I was kind of going off of that. What are your thoughts right now on like the current state of wrestling? Like,
yeah, like you mentioned,
like,
you were doing the AEW show in London, right? So you've met some of the guys from AEW, and
yeah, and I enjoy it. I enjoy all the products, right? I mean, I'm going to ebb and flow certainly between various products at different times. Some days I know more people that are working for TNA than AEW, so I might spend a little bit more time watching that show for a bit and trying to follow along. And for better or worse, I might have lots of criticisms about it, or find things that I really do enjoy about it, that I can apply to my own role, whether I'm promoting, or trying to find things in other people that I get to share a locker room with, and try and build them up and build their confidence, and help them. You know what, like, would be really cool with you. So I try to pay attention to as much as I can out there, and you know what, it's all good. It's all good. It's and I think it's finally landed in a place where everybody kind of has their own lane again, because for a long time it was really muddied, like who's doing what. Well, let's try to do what they do, but a little bit better or a little bit different or whatever. I think like AEW's kind of returned to yeah, thanks buddy. There's this, he can smell the skunk outside. That's what he's got. I can smell the skunk outside, but
oh dear.
We're want to close the door or the window, but it's too warm. Anyway, I think the like I enjoy watching it still, and part of it is to continue to learn. I still enjoy the business aspect of it. I love the business side of it. I love scouting. I love breaking the fourth wall in front of my wife and kid, and trying to predict what just happened for real, or what might be, or trying to identify what just happened for real, and why things went a certain way versus what might be happening down the road, or why. And so I enjoy the products right now, and I think AEW last night, for example, because it's been a while, like you have to subscribe to everything, so I don't, and I'm not good at finding good streams, right? So and I don't want to, but I watch it. I watch all the WWE stuff right now. I'm growing a little tired of it, right? For real. It's getting
that seems
frustrating.
to be a common sentiment.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. So I think it's think it's always going to do this, right? Like it's always going to do this. It was hot as anything 2 years ago, and I was so happy because I actually already canceled the WWE network. And then when the big change happened, I was like, well, I guess I better subscribe again. And I loved it. I was so happy. And that just happened to be when things were kind of falling off the rails for AEW. And then I started watching more TNA again. And then, you know, now I really enjoyed the show we watched last night. Yes, I got to have my own fun little role in that, like minor as it was, as kind of like a plant, right? Like a seat. They call us seat fillers, but I mean,
A seat filler, yeah.
if you do the job right and you're on camera, like I can't tell you how many messages I got this morning. Like, dude, saw you on TV last night. Yeah, man, were you ever fired up during the FTR thing? I was like, well, yeah. Like I was
I mean,
absolutely doing my job. I
I
was
mean
absolutely getting this entire
that
section behind me to boo the whole time.
so that segment alone was huge in general, just because of what it means to tag team wrestling, but also because it's in Canada and freaking Edge and Christian, Cope and Christian are there. Like
Mhm.
that's crazy. In
It it
in
it
2025.
and it was incredible. It was fun listening to Tommy, uh, and there, you know, I haven't wrestled Tommy Dreamer, but you know, I sat in the locker room with him, and he wouldn't shut up. Like he's just the nicest guy. He liked my
Mhm.
hair, so he complimented my hair. It started there, and then honestly, at some point, I'm like, dude, I really have to go. Like, stop talking. He is that nice. Um, he just wouldn't speak it, but you know, he of all people, when I was this especially really early on, and I'm like going, I don't know if I belong and stuff. And he's like, bro, like, are you having fun? Yeah. Is the crowd reacting? Yeah. Then you absolutely belong. He was one of the ones that encouraged me right from the early days, you know. So I'm still like, I'm such a huge Tommy Dreamer fan. Listening to him last night compliment the crowd, and I played it for my son for Busted Open, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, that was us. Hell yeah. Right? Like we knew our
Yeah.
job last night. When he
Yeah.
specifically called, you know, how much we were booing during that. Like as the crowd beside us started to get quiet, I'm not taking all the credit. There's a lot of good fans in London for sure. But it was also nice to know that when it started to die down, like I almost passed out. I was yelling so hard. People were like, man, were you ever fired up? Saw you on TV last night. Man, you were angry. I was like, cool. Like if that's how it looked, then maybe
You
Tony
were doing
noticed
your
too.
job.
And maybe Tony noticed too, and he'll, you know, sign me to a contract, and I can be a producer at some point. Like honestly, I still have a dream, right?
Of course.
Um,
Of
sign me
course.
up. I'll scout talent in Canada. I'll do whatever. I'll build relationships. I'll do whatever I can to continue to be a part of it. So I've not lost the dream. I just know it's different when I'm 50 years old. It's not going to
Mm.
be
Mhm.
to be in the ring in that capacity. I still get to do that though, for as long as my body will let me at the local level. And that's tons of fun. But no, I love it. I love it. I love watching it. I still watch as much as I can, and I listen to um, wrestling podcasts as much as I can. So
Yeah, I'm pretty much like in the same boat. Like I watch everything that I can watch. I listen to everything I can listen to when when I have the time to do it. I love it so much. It's the one thing that I like I think it's the one thing wrestling is the one thing that I'm the most passionate about, which is why I get so emotional about certain things, whether it's positively or negatively. Alan is nodding and because he knows. And yeah, I love that. It never goes away. It's just a passion
and
will always be a passion.
and you know what though, and it translates whether you're a fan, a podcast host, or you get to be in the ring. And again, for as privileged as I am right now to be able to help tell stories and have people buy shirts with my logo and name on it, and the logo that I designed. And I mean, I've got at least 3 different designs of shirts and hats that sell out, and like it's wild for me. And I think it's just because people know how much fun I'm having out there. Like that's part of it. It's the passion, it's the ability to transfer that. And people come to me all the time and they're like, "Hey man, do you think I could be a ref, or do you like I have a character name. Do you think you'd let me wrestle for Chem Valley Wrestling?" And I go, "Well, no. Go to wrestling school, get trained, go work a bunch
Mhm.
of shows somewhere else, because I'm generally not taking super green people unless it's somebody that I know who's training them and is saying, 'Hey, do you have a spot for one of my kids?'" absolutely for you, and we'll create special safe environments for them to come in and get work in front of 300-400 people and feel that out and enjoy themselves. But I mean, in the meantime, we all have a role in this business, right? And
Yeah.
right now, I'm super privileged that part of my role is to still perform in front of people when I never thought it could happen. I just did a year and a half storyline with Bikram Prasher, the Punjabi prodigy, and we crossed
Oh,
it
wow.
over between two different promotions. And because Hammerlock tours around, they're doing like 30 shows a year. So when we're doing storylines, like we get to really flesh them out. So for like a year and a half, we did a title chase where we were both chasing the title, and then he ends up winning it in a triple threat for the heavyweight title. But I'm still Great Lakes champion here. So then we're champ, and we're still battling it out. And he ends up taking my Great Lakes title here. Both of us were injured, like severely injured, while we went to that cage match. So again, our passion, our creativity has to come into play because we're both wrestling against doctor's orders, but we're already a year and a bit into the storyline. It's like, dude, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not getting into the cage with you. And he's like, same. So now we have to take care of each other and get more creative and bring the fans along for another trip while I'm waiting to have knee surgery. Shouldn't be in the ring, but let's figure this out. Let's still tell the story and bring the fans up. And boy, oh boy, when he walked out of the ring and won the title off me, what an explosion. Well, then we're both out for months and months and months, and we kept showing up at shows and doing in-ring promos, and I'm on crutches. I got 2 knee surgeries. He's got a serious concussion, and we're still drawing people in without even now having to take a single bump because now we're in the ring facing each other off, doing it with words until finally we do the blow-off match in Stratford, where I take his title, the Hammerlock title off of him in another blood-soaked match. Oops, 7 stitches later. I didn't mean to,
Mhm.
but we got really excited. But again, in all of that, to say that we all get to bring that passion. I mean, those people sell out in Stratford, and people my age, older than me, younger than me, kids buying my stuff. Like, not only is that a privilege, but again, it's a testament when you get in a locker room or you get in front of people, you know who the people are that are super, super passionate. And people will come up to me all the time and like, well, why'd you wrestle that guy when you could have wrestled this other dude? And I'm like, because that kid loves what we do.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he's not whatever. Like, I don't even want to hear it. What I see that kid be able to do, or what I see that young man be able to do, is different than when you could see in him. And we went out there and we tore it up, and that place erupted at the
Yeah.
end of the match. So what's that? That's passion, right? So I think, whether you're passionate about it and get to do a podcast, at some point I'll still be passionate about it, and I'll just be, hopefully encouraging young people to be digging within themselves to find the next level of whoever they are, so we can get the same reaction from the fans.
Well, that's awesome. I love to hear that. I love people being passionate about wrestling and never losing that passion. It's great. Um, so we've kept you for a little while. I think we've enjoyed this conversation a lot. You've given us a lot of great stories, great stuff that that you've been through and all of that. So I think we're gonna call it there. But we want to thank you so much for coming on and
Yes,
telling us your story and yeah, I very much appreciate it as I'm sure Alan does as well.
of course. Yeah, Brian. Once again, thank you very much for taking your time to come and talk to us. I know you're a busy man. You've got a lot of things on the go. I guess before we go, maybe let people know where they can find you. Maybe like your social media. Maybe where's your next show at? If you want people to come out and see the honorable one, lay some smackdown on some poor unfortunate soul out there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. Well, a couple of places I think that you'd be wise to check me out on. If you want to check out Hammerlock Pure Wrestling, I am the heavyweight champion right now. So Hammerlock Wrestling on Instagram and Facebook. UCW, Unified Championship Wrestling, this new startup in running out of Vaughan, and I so far defending the Hammerlock title there until they establish their own championship, which is amazing, and it's a real privilege because again, no matter who it is, that's somebody else's passion, right? Who's putting their energy and their reputation on the line, their sponsorship, all their contacts, their lifelong dream to bring me in and a whole bunch of great wrestlers to come in and put on a show in Vaughan or wherever it is. So much respect to that crew. I should be in Hamilton in a couple of weeks as well for, oh gosh, another, used to be Courage Pro, but there was some stuff that happened there. And the one guy from Courage Pro that's really great is moving forward with a new promotion. And I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm sorry, brother. I forgot the name of your promotion. But it'll just look for the new one in Hamilton in mid-November. And for me personally, Chem Valley Wrestling, we're running in Sarnia this weekend. September, depends on when this is coming out, but September 20th will be in Sarnia for Chem Valley Wrestling, and we'll be back for Chem Valley Wrestling again on October 11th in Sarnia at the Dante Club for a couple of, just top shelf shows here. We got great fans. We pack the place. We sell out every time. So we're going to have a great time here for Chem Valley Wrestling. And then me personally, Brian White 519 on Instagram, Brian White on Facebook. Just find me there. And yeah, I just deactivated Twitter today finally. So good job. Had enough of that dog and pony show.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you once again for being so generous with your time and telling us your story and everything. So that is going to do it for us, everybody. Make sure to go to our linktree / Going Over Big Time podcast for all the ways to follow the show, me, Alan, and as well as the YouTube and everything. And yeah, like we say every show, watch the wrestling that you want to watch. And Alan, give us your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to us with Brian here, to listen to him in a story. And we just thank you for listening to another episode of SLTD Going Over Big Time. Yes, please follow us on all of our social media, and have a good evening.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.